I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we'd like to talk to you about healing life's hurts. And the one thing that we can say with some certainty is that you are going to have hurts and sufferings in your life. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are, how successful you are. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you do. You are going to have difficulties. And on that happy and high note, we can start the program. And of course, we know that to be true. And we spend a lot of time in this program. We spend a lot of time in our counseling and a lot of time in our ministry, helping people understand that healing hurts and dealing with problems is really part and parcel of what the human and spiritual condition is about, isn't it, Iris?
Yes, it is. And we empathize with others to sometimes too much of a degree because we see how hurtful certain circumstances are in lives. And yet we can inspire them and help them to get over whatever it is that's bothering them by showing them their options and showing what is possible in their lives. And so the more people think in that way, then the more they're able to accept that what happens is temporary or is necessary or something that's more positive than negative. Mm-hmm. And so as they think in that way, then their hurts are lessened, aren't they?
They are. I think one of the fundamentals that we spend a lot of time in both counseling and at the church working in teaching is the importance of living in the now and putting in perspective the time that we spend in the future and in the past. And for so many of us, we spend time in the past, and a lot of the time that we spend in the past, and it's true for all of us, every human being, we spend time, many of us in the past, rehashing old things that have happened. And in our counseling work, we spend a lot of time dealing with people who haven't been willing and able to let go of hurts of the past. And each time we go back in our lives, in our thoughts, in our mind, and leave this present moment, and step back into a hurt or a pain, it's like opening an old wound. And some of us just love to open those old wounds, it seems. And it is a painful process. Now there are hurts that are fresh and real in the present moment, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we get along in this session together. But I think for the next couple of minutes we need to talk about the importance of healing the hurts of the past. And one of the things that we need to understand is that when we've been hurt, if someone has said something or done something, or if we have a hurt that we feel that we have caused or inflicted upon someone in the past, those things are in the past. And if we keep going back to them and referencing them, if we keep them fresh and alive, and if we keep bringing them into the now, they continue to harm us, they continue to hurt us, they continue to bring us pain over and over again. And sometimes the process of healing has to do with letting go of that and letting it be in the past and giving in, not giving up, but giving in to the fact that those hurts are something that existed in the past, it's over, and now I don't need to go back to that so often. And it isn't that we wipe it out of our memory. It isn't even that we don't revisit it. It is that we not revisit it to the same extent that we have. And I'm reminded of the woman, and I've told this story so many times, of the lady who came to me for counseling a number of years ago about her divorce. And she had asked for a session, and we had several sessions, and it took me about 3 sessions until she said something that triggered the fact that it never occurred to me to ask her when this separation and divorce took place, because it was so fresh, and she was sharing with me as though it were a current event in her life, and it had happened some 8 or 10 years prior. And so she had been separated 8 or 10 years, but it was so fresh that she was able to come to me, even in my capacity, and convince me that it was so fresh. Well, it was fresh because of the fact that she kept it so fresh and alive in her life. And we do that. And so healing the hurts of the past is one of the things that I think we need to do. And there isn't a way to fix those things in some instances. The way to fix them is to understand that they did occur in the past and that they're a part of our past and that we've learned from them, we've gained from them, but it's time to let go of them. And we also need to look at ourselves sometimes and and be open to the fact that sometimes we want to hold on to the hurts of the past because they give us validation and importance in the present moment. And that is something we need to be cautious of.
Yes, it is. And that's very sad that people have such a paucity of excitement in their life, but they have to hold on to negative things instead of just getting on with their lives and getting on with new things. And so the advice we could give people who are holding on to hurts, well, the advice I would give is if they've held on to hurt that long and haven't succeeded in getting rid of it, then to get professional help. And there's all kinds of professional help available because they obviously have to work through that. They can't just drop it. They can't just suddenly say, I'm be gone, and it'll be gone. If it's lasted that long, then they need to really work at it and to work through it. And what counseling does, it shows people their options, and it would show them that the option of getting on with their life or the option of hanging on to old hurts. And so that would be one thing they could do. Another would be to get new interests in their lives, because when people who have a sudden death or a sudden divorce or sudden loss of work or sudden change of anything that's life-changing, well, they just need to get new experiences so they can remember those happily instead of remembering the negative aspect. And I've seen that happen with many people, and I'm sure you have too, that if they do get new experiences behind them in their lives, new endeavors, new aims and goals and hopes, then they can let go of the past more fully.
That's right. And as we take the hurts of the past, or we take the hurts of the present, and we allow ourselves to detach from them, and we make a conscious decision to release them to the extent that we can, then we make room for new experiences. And that's what our lives are about. Our lives are about experience day to day, and circumstances and situations change. People come into our lives and out of our lives. And so often when we're counseling and talking to people about finances or about relationships, we talk about the fact that as one goes out, then it creates room for something else to come in. But if that one goes out and that experience of hurt, whether it's a separation in a relationship or through a death, if someone goes out of our life, if we're not willing to work through the grieving and the hurt and come out to create new space in our lives, but we fill that space with the pain and the hurt, there's no room for anyone else.
Exactly.
And so often we find that happening in people's lives. And it's natural for us when we have a loss, and I'm thinking now of people who have relationships that end, or the devastation of a death, which we're all going to deal with in life. It's hard to come to the point of letting that hurt go to the extent that there's room for someone else. But there is room for someone else. And maybe it's not room for someone else in an intimate relationship. There are people who marry and do marry for life, and their spouse dies, and they're not prepared to have someone take their place. But they should be prepared to let other people come into their lives at different levels and not be so consumed totally with that loss. And I'm thinking of people that I've dealt with over the years who have had the loss of someone through death, a loved one, spouse particularly, where people continue to go to the cemetery every day, where they continue to bring the picture out every day, they continue to cry every day, and that hurt and that loss and that suffering is kept alive. Well, in that process, there's no room for anything else. And so one of the things that we often do is we suggest, maybe instead of going every day, go once a week, and then go once a month to the cemetery. Or if you want to have that remembrance, do it so that there becomes some distance, so that there's room for something else in our lives. And as we heal the hurts in our life, the devastating hurts, we really do need to work to make room for something else, because we can become consumed by it.
Exactly. And also when we're grieving that deeply and carrying it so fully from day to day to day and carrying it forth, then we need to ask why. Why is this necessary? And usually it's guilt. And I know from having lost those in my own life through death, I never realized until I faced it myself how most of our grief is created through guilt. guilt and wishing we could do things for that person or think they could have done things for us. But a great deal of it is guilt. And usually the guilt is unfounded because everything is perception. It's our own perception. We go through life on a perception. And so it's our perception of what we could have had or what we could have done. And so as we change that perception, then we change the emotion within us in relation to that incident or that person or that loss and or that disappointment. And so we need to work on changing our perception and consciously do it. And we have to know what we're doing and know that we're holding ourselves back and also being a detriment to the people around us. Because even if we don't have other people really close to us, just the people we come in contact with, we owe it to them to put on a bright face, sincerely, and we owe it to our own progression of life to do our very best in whatever we do, and to have an open and clear mind. It's being shown to us more and more and more, and I know you're very aware of this, that we're all one. We're all one. And so what affects one person affects every person. And the thoughts we send out affect the global brain, the mass consciousness, and that is our responsibility to lift instead of to push down.
And as we go deeper and deeper into these hurts and keep them alive, we do create a vibration, don't we?
Yes.
And so often people that are deeply hurt become people to whom others don't want to come, and around whom others do not want to be. And then they become more isolated. And so it is important for us to work through the process. And it's very important, too, to point out that we do need to work through it. It's not as though we get hurt and we have a loss and today we're sad and tomorrow we're happy. It is a process. And the process comes about through our awareness of the way that we're thinking, through our support system, through our circle of friends and family, and through a variety of mechanisms for us to cope with what's happened to us. But what we're talking about is healing hurts. And one of the magnificent things about healing, and we all know if we cut our hand or our body, that the healing process takes some time. And that the healing process brings with it a variety of emotions and physiological and psychological events. If I cut my hand with a razor blade, there's a pain that happens immediately. And then, of course, as that pain subsides, then I may have to have that treated. And of course, if I put iodine on it, it's going to cause another pain. And if I have stitches, there's going to be more pain. And then as the wound begins to heal, it itches. And so it's a process. And emotional and spiritual hurts are healed in much the same way. There is a process, and it's important that we go through the steps, and we go through the feelings, and we go through the process. And of course, a lot of people have written a lot of things about how that process is to go, and we don't need to go into that, because I find that once we do that, people then want to tick it off, and if I don't go through this, then I have missed something. But the fact is that there is a process of healing. There's a process of healing hurt. And if it's a devastating hurt, then there's going to be the period of grieving, there's going to be the period of sadness, but then out of that, there has to be and there needs to be healing.
Yes, and we can just know and expect that we need time. And regardless of what the hurt has been, then we need time to get over it. But we have control of our own destiny, and it's up to us as to how we use that intermediate time to get over whatever it is the hurt might have been. And it wouldn't matter what the hurt has been. We're hurt. And like you say, if you're hurt, you're hurt. So we can accept the fact, yes, this was very hurtful, but there are options on how to get through that time. And the option might be to reach out to others. It might be any number of things, but we have to determine what it is the goal and what we want to do, and then change our ways until we do it. And to know that, yes, only time will be the answer.
Yeah, and as we move through time, it's our own time, and sometimes it's God's time. But the time does allow us to deal with the circumstance and situation, and so there is no specific in this whole process. And we'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with you.
like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month, we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Before the break, we were talking about the issue of time and the healing process, and I think it is important that we do spend a little time talking about the fact that when we do have hurts, we need to give ourselves some time, but we need to allow that time to be reasonable. And then the other thing I think I'd like to touch on in the few minutes that we have left is getting into the kind of superficial hurts that we all have, you know, with hurts where someone says something or does something. And that's very common to all of us, and we need to be able to deal with that. But on the time issue, the timing of the healing process is really up to us, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's up to us in that we can let others reach out to us. And so we can say that you need to have others reach out to you and accept them, accept the help that's offered. Some people don't want to accept help. They don't want to accept that friends and loved ones want to reach out to them. And so we need to just change that modality of thinking. Whatever is bringing us unhappiness, then we need to look at it closely and see, what do we need to change? What needs to be different? And it might be to go out socially more often. It might be to stay home more. It could be any number of things. The same rule wouldn't apply to everyone. But we need to know ourselves and then know what it is we need. And whatever's making us unhappy, then change that aspect of life.
Right. And of course, at the core of what we're talking about is changing ourselves, isn't it? It's changing the way that we're dealing with the circumstance, the situation. And of course, in metaphysical New Thought philosophy, which is what we teach and what we talk about, that is so much the process of changing our way of thinking. When people do say things that hurt our feelings, how do we get over that?
Well, the way we get over it is think they don't know any better. And so if they don't know any better, then we can forgive them. They didn't mean it as a slight or an insult. And if they did, well, that's their problem. And so I think that that's one of the least of our worries that we're going to, and I know that you do too, but we both have counseled so many people who are hurt at what other people say that we know it's a reality because it brings a lot of unhappiness into people's lives. But when we think healthfully and when we think about and consider ourselves as being that we're inviolate, they can't reach us because they can only reach us if we believe they can reach us. So if we know that it's only their opinion and they have a right to their opinion, and perhaps if they see us acting more happy and content and centered in our own lives, then it might change them. Then we can get on with our lives. But to me, it's so nonsensical to be concerned about what other people think.
Right. We do get our feelings hurt, you know, and people get their feelings hurt. And we do that, and you just touched upon a very, very important point. It's very hard for many of us to conceptualize and understand and see that point. But when we get our feelings hurt, we have permitted that. We have permitted it. Exactly. They haven't hurt us. We believe so often that they've hurt us, but we've allowed them to hurt us because we have taken what they have said to heart, and we have believed it. It's just like if someone says Mike Costello is stupid. Well, I know that I'm not stupid, and so if someone says such a thing, well, that's a simple thing to say. But so many of us are so sensitive to that fact. And of course, Terry Cole Whitaker years ago wrote a wonderful book. I think the title was "What You Think of Me Is None of My Business," and that concept is so important because what people think of us, what people think of us, of course, what our intimates and our friends think of us sometimes is very important to us and can be cutting, and for a lot of people it's very devastating. But the reality is people say things for a myriad of reasons, and people say things in many instances that they don't mean, or they say things that are unfounded, or they say things to be vindictive, or they say things to just to cause trouble. There are lots of reasons that people say things, and so we don't really need to get into why they're saying the things. What we need to understand is whether or not we're allowing what they're saying about us or to us to cut us to the bone, and whether we're going to permit ourselves to suffer needlessly because of it. And so often, and you and I have both dealt with people who've come and said, well, how could I ever speak to her again or him after what they said to me? Because that internalization of what's been said has become so much a reality, and they have allowed that assault upon their person to be so real, when in fact it would have been just as easy to let that go. But it has to do with the dynamic of how it is we see ourselves and how it is we see and value the view that others have of us. And we do need to understand that we need to let others think what they want, and that doesn't really have an impact upon us to any large extent except as we allow it to.
Yes, and also we can always give the benefit of the doubt that they didn't really mean what we thought they might have meant.
Right.
And very often that's true. It's our own perception. We perceive one thing and they perceived another as they were speaking, and so then taken out of context it sounds like a wholly different thing. So we can give the benefit of that doubt, and I know it happens a lot of times. There was one time my husband said to me that a certain friend of ours thought I was too bossy. So I said to the friend, Bern says, you think I'm too bossy? In what way am I too bossy? And she said, oh, I never said you were too bossy. She said, I said you command people. And she said, that means that when you ask someone to do something, they really want to do that for you. And it put a whole different context into things. So, and my husband really wasn't being vicious. He was trying to prove a point that I was too bossy. But that's a good example that he perceived that she was saying one thing, he heard her say one thing, when she was truly saying something totally different. So if we can just remember things like that, and it's just like I knew my friend wouldn't have said I was too bossy. If she thought I was, she would be the first to tell me. And so this is what we can often do, is just ask someone, what made you think that I'm such and such? Or what made you think that? Or what is it that's causing that thought in your head? And a lot of people wouldn't think to do that, but it's wise to do that.
It is. And we do need to forgive.
Yes.
And we need to forgive what other people do. And that doesn't mean we need to go to them and say, I forgive you. Because,
Yes.
But forgiveness is a matter that takes place within us.
In your own heart.
And it has to do with us. And we need to have a lot more forgiveness in our lives. And before time really gets away from us, one of the things almost all of us need to have forgiveness for is any kind of grudges or negativity or hurt or pain that we feel about our childhood. Because so many of us feel about our parents, so often, and there are abusive parents, and there's no question about that, and there are horrible things that happen. But for the most part, the superficial kinds of things that parents do to children that we hold on to all of our lives, what we need to understand is, for the most part, parents are doing the best that they can. They may not be the best parents. They may not be the best decisions. They may not have done the most for you. But the fact is that they would have if they'd known better, but they didn't. And I think Buckminster Fuller was the one that said, that some of us are less damaged than others. And so we're all damaged in life through our experiences, through the way that we're raised, and through our childhood and our adolescence and our adult life. And some people are so damaged that they have such rage within them that they rage against the world, and it comes out in violent and horrible ways. Well, some of those people are mothers and fathers. And so often we need to forgive our parents and forgive those who raised us. And of course, there are some deep, deep physical, emotional, and abusive hurts that take a lot of work and take a lot of professional help. But I'm talking about the kind of superficial things where my mother said this, or my father did this to me. My mother told me that I was a failure, and so I've always been a failure. Those kinds of things that we hold on to. And the mother, in her heart of hearts, probably had deep and profound love for that child and thought that those were motivating statements. And so we need to forgive that. We need to let go in some cases of the hurts that we had in our childhood and in the relationships we had with our parents, with the failings that if our parents failed to be good parents, so they failed to be good parents. I'm 51 years old, whatever age we are, let go of your childhood. And again, I'm not talking about deep-seated issues because some of those need help, but for many of us, we need to be forgiving and let those things go. The same with relationships. If we've ended a relationship, if we've gone through divorce and separation, if we've gone through an engagement or a relationship with someone and it ended badly, and there were awful things said and terrible things done, and you know, the bank was the thing was smashed. Well, let it be smashed and let go of it. We need to really let go of some of those things that we hold on to, because we're really hurting ourselves over and over again by doing it.
We must let them go in order to proceed with our lives in a happy way. And just recently I did a past life therapy session with a young man who was unhappy because he's not progressing in his business, in the business world, the way he feels he should and could and would like to. And then during his session, he brought out a lot of emotion, very deep pain from his childhood and from when he was about 13 or 14 years old. And that happens so often. And what you just said rang true for this incident, where he's carried this all his life. And he could see when we talked about it afterward that the reason he's not been able to succeed in the business world is because he was carrying this deep rage within him. And you'd never guess that he was carrying that rage within him, just on the surface, but it was there. And so it's detrimental to us. So we need to get it out. And if we can't get beyond it in our own right, in our own way, then we do need professional help, and we need to get on with it. And professional help just shows us our options and shows us what we could have done in various ways, and then we make our choices. And life is a series of choices. So if we need help making those choices and seeing that we have choices, then get that help. But we need to get beyond hurt feelings. We need to get beyond all that negativity, because everything is energy and it builds up like pockets within us. And then when it's brought out, then that pocket is dissipated, and we can go. Then we're free to go on with our lives.
And that's the key to what we're talking about. That's the key to this whole dialogue of healing hurts, is to be free of these hurts and to be free of the suffering and the pain that we've had, so that we can indeed get on with life. And we hope that you understand that every one of us has hurts, and that every one of us will have hurts in our lives, and that as we allow those hurts to be healed, we become dynamic people, we become empowered, we become free, and we become the people that God intended us to be. We hope that you have found this information to be useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.